Yes, I gotta have faith.
You're listening to Faith at Work, brought to you by LymeRevive.org. Information and healing for Lyme disease. Now to our host, Carl Grant.
Welcome to Faith at Work. I'm Carl Grant, here with Paul Farrell, CEO of Nehemiah Security. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Good to be here, Carl.
So, Paul, we like to start these interviews talking about your work life. It seems like everything you've touched turns to gold, and want you to tell our listeners a little bit about how you got you started and some of the successes you've had.
Well, it's all praise to God if I've been successful before. And the one thing I realized along the way is that a poor boy from Oswego, New York, way upstate New York, nowhere's near a computer, went to school in Buffalo, and for some reason, when he was paying for education himself, decided to take a sixth course, and that sixth course was in programming. And that's God's providence. I just praise God for that every day, because being in high tech since that time has put me in position for him to bless me many times over, and we are very blessed. But, you know, the net of that whole story is I get out of school, and I've got a job offer from a savings bank in the local area, and that's like $9,500, and my starting salary as a programmer was $19,680. So you wonder which one I took, but that's how I got started, and I believe that's how God's hand was upon me to get here to make a difference in the world. As today, the CEO of Nehemiah Security. So my journey came through AOL in the late 90s. Definitely another providence of God that I ended up in that job. A complete story of by chance meeting a guy on a plane, my wife begging me to take the interview, and me saying, and the end of this whole thing, I said, honey, our salary is going down this much, and they're giving us all this stock. But at the time, they were being sued by every attorney general in the United States because they went to unlimited. And she's saying, take the job. So, again, another providence of God. But
now, were you programming at AOL?
No, I had moved on to more business development activities, and I was actually, remember their famous network? I was actually monetizing their network, selling it to corporations. So when they weren't using it during the day and you're a business travel, you could call in and get your email and stuff through their network. It was a great little business. It worked well for a while until they decided to focus on the core business, which is a great lesson for us all, focusing on the core business. And then I moved into more biz dev for them, doing the big deals they did at the time in financial services and other places. So God blessed me there as well. And then since then, when I'm leaving AOL, I was successful again. And then before this job, I bought a firm from VeriSign in 2009. And then sold it to Reed Elsevier LexisNexis in 2014, late in the year, and then started Nehemiah about 9 months after that.
That one was Moreover, right?
That was Moreover, yeah. Moreover Technologies, and they were in a big data play. But all along, if you look for God and you look for his providences, you'll see him at work. And, you know, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to keep journaling. Remember these things. Like, there's so many things going down the home stretch that God did. Is that we sold this really big deal at Nehemiah's, or at Moreover is one of the things I remember, right? And by the way, we're being acquired, so you have to make those numbers every month, right? Not just every quarter, every month. And there's a lot of pressure. We make a big deal. We sold a big electronics company, and I didn't have anybody to install it at all, a project manager. We had nobody. We had no expertise. The deal closed on Friday, and on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, a guy called me and said, I've heard about the good things you're doing. I want to work for you for 2 months while I'm in between two opportunities. Do you have anything for me? Boom. God, providence. And there's so many other things that have come up over the years.
And tell us a little bit about what Nehemiah does.
Nehemiah is a cybersecurity firm, and what we do is we help people in the C-suite put a dollar amount on their cyber risk so they can communicate with each other and with the board and people below them. Many of the use cases, how much insurance should I have? I've got a big budget. How do I divide it between my 12 divisions that want it? Things like those are some of the questions we help executives with.
So now, at what point in your life did you come to faith?
I would say, and growing up in a Catholic family, we always knew Christ, right? You always knew who he was. But he didn't get to become ingrained in me until after AOL. So you're talking about 2004, maybe 14 years ago. I was caught up in a situation where post-AOL, some things that happened at AOL that drove me to my knees because I couldn't control it. So my whole life, I was smart enough to talk my way out of something or figure my way out of it or work my way out of it. I had an uncle that right before he died said, I was telling him something I was doing, and he laughed, and he said, yep, you can always step in mud and come out with none on you, but I've always been able to do that, and this was the first time that I just had to rely straight on God. And I can remember getting down on my knees and saying, Lord, I can't do this. I'm just putting it all on you. And then quickly thereafter, joined an evangelical church, and now, I start every day with an hour of Bible study, 5:30 to 6:30 every morning. That's what I'm doing.
So the name of your company is Peculiar. Is that from the Bible?
Absolutely, positively, on purpose. So, there's a long story. I could take up the rest of this interview telling you, but I'll give you 4 things. Nehemiah was an advisor to kings as a cupbearer, right? We would like to be advisors to CEOs. Nehemiah had a heart for his homeland and built a wall of protection. We have a heart for our customers, and we would like to help them building their wall of protection. And then there's 2 other things that are not so obvious in there. Everybody took care of the wall in front of their house. So if you remember the verses, one person fought and the other person guarded, and one builded, one guarded, and they switched on and off. Well, for us to be successful, everybody in our organization has to do their job. Payables, receivables, accounting, customer support, development. And it's just take care of your business in front of you, because if everybody takes care of their business in front of them, we'll be successful. And then the last one is the last lesson I like to talk about that's a little unknown in there is they had detractors. And of course, when you're stepping out for God, you will have detractors as well. And they tried to get Nehemiah off the wall to bring him in the forest to kill him. And Nehemiah's quote was, I'm doing a good works here, I have to focus. And that's the other thing about us is we have to focus on the task that God's given us, and we can't get distracted. When you have a young, growing firm, you have 50 entrepreneurial people think about your product and want to take you over to the right or to the left. And as CEO, we got to make sure we march down the middle of the road and stay on mission and don't get distracted, especially at this size.
So in addition to naming your company out of the Bible, what are some other ways you integrate your faith in your work?
Well, I think it's really important, and I would encourage everybody out there to pray for their employees by name every week. So with our federal division and the commercial division, we have just shy of 100 people, and every Monday morning we walk down the list praying for them. Now, lifting up their name is good enough, but you'll find out things about people just because of their circumstances. Maybe you have somebody that's unmarried and in their 50s. You pray that God brings them companionship. Right? Overall, the prayer is, I skipped the most important one, is that if they don't know Christ, they'll come to Christ because they're here. And for people that know Christ, that they're sanctified by being in our presence, that we grow them closer to Christ. Then you can pray for things like you hear about new babies. You can pray for that and how they enter the family and for their eventual coming to Christ. You can pray for deaths in the family. You can pray for single people to be pure and to walk with Christ. So when you sit down and you look at an employee list, even though I don't see many of these people every day, you can imagine based upon where they are, their age, you can pray some things, but if you don't, lift up their name. I pray for Carl Grant, and then you're lifting him up, and that's good. And I've had some experiences post recommending this to people where people have come back to me, and we're sitting down at dinner a couple of years ago, and a gentleman said, "You revolutionized my life." And I'm like, okay, what did I do? Because sometimes the Holy Spirit uses me, and I'll make utterances, and I don't remember them because they're just forgotten. He says, "You told me to pray for my not only my employees, but also my customers, and this has made a tremendous difference." And he rattled off 5 things that have happened since he started praying. So I encourage everybody to do that. The other thing, too, is don't be afraid to pray. So though we're not 100% Christian here, every time that we eat together 3-4 times a week, we'll say, just a word of grace. And that can happen everywhere. So not only here, but as I travel even in the Middle East, Israel, all through Europe, got to start a meal with a prayer and got to remember it. Most recently, it's kind of funny. It's kind of more personal than work, but I'm in a lot of Ubers. I always say at the end of the Uber ride, may I pray for you? I'm a Christian, and I'd like to pray for you. Is there something I can pray for you? Because I'm going to stand on the curb as you pull away, and I'm going to pray for you. I can't count the number of just unbelievable blessings that have been shown. I've actually sat there and put my hand on a person's shoulder and prayed for him for 5 minutes, raining down from heaven. And yesterday was a Muslim guy, and just was ecstatic that we cared enough about him to lift him up in prayer. And his family had 4 or 5 kids or whatever, and in the teenage years. And I'm like, I can only imagine because I've been there, right? Yeah. So those are a few of the ways. Also, we open up our doors to any Christian event. I mean, this goes with our home, and with this at Nehemiah, we host people. They call us up, like with High Tech Prayer Breakfast has been hosting functions in our training room. There's some people that use our conference rooms at night after we go. We're very busy during the day. So we try to, wherever possible, meet people. The other thing that comes to mind is people come to us. Like, would you talk to my son? Or my daughter, she's getting out of college. And we have a prayer around here. We say, okay, Jesus, I'm going to leave. I'm going to host somebody for the next hour. I'm going to be your hands and feet on earth. But while I'm doing this, you have Nehemiah. And so please, and I count this number of times, started a meeting and there was a customer service flare up and people were, angry and frustrated and whatever. And you come out an hour later and peace. Because he does a much better job running our businesses than we do. We just got to hand it over to him from time to time when realizing that we're doing his work here on earth.
Now, you did a big outreach with a large security conference on the West Coast this year. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if you're in the cybersecurity industry, there's a couple big events where 60,000 people converge upon San Francisco and Las Vegas during the year. But at the San Francisco event, we put on our version of the High Tech Prayer Breakfast, which is on a Thursday morning, we had a great speaker in, and he moved the crowd, and we actually made a big difference. And it was really important to see because typically, if you haven't been to these events before, they go to exhibits and training courses all day, and then the whole night's about eating and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. And, come to free drinks at this bar, and there's thousands of people. And we thought that we needed to cast a different die on the water. And we were blessed by Sue Warnke at Salesforce and Joel Fulton from Splunk gave their testimonies and wowed the crowd. And it was a very spiritual morning. And many times since then, several people come up to me and said, "Oh, what a breakfast!" And so we intend to do it again. And it's once again another blessing from God who just laid it on our hearts, and you act on it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today. You've been a blessing to the business community here, and we appreciate you being on the show. I want to thank Paul Farrell, CEO of Nehemiah Security, for joining us today, and would like you to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Faith at Work Radio. I'm Carl Grant, and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, I gotta have faith. I gotta have
You have been listening to Faith at Work with Carl Grant, brought to you by LimeRevive.org.